It's certainly amazing spring in New York. Just a week ago it was snowing on Mother's Day, and now it's bright and shiny and 80 degrees out. Just a month ago there were no leaves on the trees. Then we woke up in the morning and it was suddenly green. It's almost like when we become a Christian, overnight we're transformed, born again, as it says in John chapter 3. Today I'd like to focus on an idea that's brought out in the book of Psalms. Psalms chapter 46. Psalms chapter 46, God is our fortress. God is our fortress against nature, against war, and against difficult people. But before we read the verses here, the 11 verses in this chapter, I'd like to focus on the preface to these verses. Where did the preface come from? Since verse 1 comes after the preface. The preface is actually part of the text. In Hebrew, the text Psalm 46, 1 through 11 is actually numbered Psalms 46, 2 through 12. But the chapter divisions commonly used today were developed by Stephen Langton, the Archbishop of Canterbury, not until 1227 AD. The Hebrew Old Testament was divided into verses by a Jewish rabbi by the name of Nathan in 1448 AD. So when Jesus said, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son," he didn't preface it by saying this is found in John 3:16. Looking at the preface of Psalm 46, which is part of the text of the Bible, it says, "For the director of music of the sons of Korah, according to Alamoth, a song." There's two questions here. The first is, who were the sons of Korah in the Old Testament? And secondly, what is an Alamoth? Answer to question number one, who were the sons of Korah in the Old Testament? The story of the sons of Korah in the Old Testament is of two fathers and two destinies. The story begins with the Israelites of Moses' time as they journeyed through the wilderness just after leaving Egypt. In Numbers 3, God set aside the Levites out of the 12 tribes of Israel for full-time service to him. They were ordained to take care of the temple and all of its implements, as well as the Ark of the Covenant. Only the descendants of Aaron, however, were allowed to serve as priests. The three sons of Levi were Gershon, Merari, and Kohath. Now the Gershonites were the descendants of Gershon and were responsible for the care of the tabernacle and tent, its coverings, the curtain at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the curtain to the courtyard, the curtain at the entrance of the courtyard surrounding the altar and tabernacle, and the ropes and everything related to their use. So essentially, the curtains. Then the Merarites were the descendants of Merari. And Merari and Kohath were all sons of Levi. So the Merarites, descendants of Merari, were appointed to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, in essence, the scaffolding, its crossbars, posts, bases, and all its equipment, and everything related to their use, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tent pegs, and ropes. What about the Kohathites? The Kohathites were the descendants of Kohath and were responsible for the care of the sanctuary. The care of the sanctuary. They were responsible for the care of the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the articles of the sanctuary used in ministering, the curtain, and everything responsible for not setting it up, but taking care of it. They were under the direct supervision of the son of Aaron, Eleazar. Unlike the Gershonites and the Merarites, who were allowed to transport items under their care on carts, the Kohathites, since they had such holy and important items as the Ark of the Covenant to carry, they had to carry the items, the holy things of the tabernacle, on their shoulders. Remember, Uzzah, when he had tried to steady the cart that was carrying the ark at one time, he was killed by God because they weren't supposed to put it on a cart. They were supposed to carry it by hand. As they carried these on their shoulders, they had the arduous burden of transporting these items from place to place as the camp moved. And boy, did the camp move. Over 40 years, it moved quite a bit. Sometimes it'd stay in the same place only a couple days or even a day or a few hours, other times for a year or two at a time. They were not allowed to actually touch the items or they would die. The priests had to wrap the sacred items in special coverings before they were transported, according to Numbers 4:15. Many of the Kohathites began to dislike this task and to covet the role of the priests. Korah was a descendant of Kohath, and he began to run with another group of a different tribe, not the Levites, but the Reubenites, malcontents, namely Dathan and Abiram. In pride, they roused a group of 250 men together to challenge the right of Moses and Aaron to the priesthood in Numbers 16. Moses summoned the rebellious men to stand before God and burn incense. God warned Moses to let the assembly know to get away from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, their households, and the Then a remarkable and terrifying event happened. Moses said, "This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these things, and that it was not my idea. If these men die a natural death and suffer the fate of all mankind, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord brings about something totally new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the realm of the dead, then you will know that these men have treated the Lord with contempt." And as soon as he finished saying all of this, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and their households, and all those associated with Korah, together with their possessions. They went down alive into the realm of the dead with everything they owned. The earth closed over them, and they perished and were gone from the community. At their cries, all the Israelites around them fled, shouting, "The earth is going to swallow us too." And then God wasn't finished yet. Fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. And this is found in Numbers chapter 16. Although this clearly marked the end of Korah, we discover that Korah's sons, perhaps too young to understand their father's uprising, or maybe too cognizant of God's authority to join in the revolt, spared. Numbers chapter 26. God judged them who turned against him in active rebellion and purified his people, but he still had a purpose and a plan for even the line of Korah. After 7 successive generations, the prophet Samuel arose from the line of Korah. The Korahites became doorkeepers and custodians for the tabernacle, according to 1 Chronicles. One group of Korahites in 1 Chronicles 12 joined King David in various military exploits and won the reputation of being expert warriors. However, the most remarkable thing to note about the sons of Korah is that during the time of King David, they became the great leaders in choral and orchestral music in the tabernacle. Heman the Korahite, Heman, had a place of great importance as a singer, along with Asaph, a Gershonite, and Jeduthun. Guess what group he was from? Sure enough, he was a Merarite. Now remember, those were the 3 sons of Levi: Kohath, Gershon, and Merari. And now these 3 cousins played an important role in the Thanksgiving pageantry when the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Jerusalem. David formed an elaborate organization for song, instrumental music, and prophesying or preaching through these cousins. Of all the Psalms in the Bible, 11 are attributed to the sons of Korah. These beautiful psalms express a spirit of great gratitude and humility to an awesome, mighty God. They express a longing for God and deep devotion. And the psalm that we are studying today, Psalm 46, was not written by King David. It was written by one of the Kohathites. We understand that these poetic songs include words such as the deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God, as the deer panteth for the. Can you imagine them singing this? These cousins of the descendants of Merari, Gershon, and Kohath. So my soul longeth after you. Or how about, how lovely is your dwelling place, O God? Or as we read in Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. I wonder if the poet who wrote these verses was remembering his own humble beginnings. His distant ancestor Korah, who perished in an earthquake for his pride and rebellion. After all, it says the mountains would quake and be cast into the sea. The earth was in an earthquake, and all these descendants or ancestors of his were destroyed. They had perished in that earthquake for the pride and rebellion. Maybe it was that reflection that prompted the following words of this same Psalm 46. He says, "Be still and know that I am God." In verse 10, "I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted here." For each of us, our own songs of renewed purpose and redemption should flow out of a heart of humility, as we remember the fallen state from which God has raised us and the redemption that we experience through God's grace. This was certainly the case for the sons of Korah. So we have two questions. Who were the sons of Korah in the Old Testament? And that we answered. But the second question is, what in the world is an Alamoth? Answer to question 2, what is an Alamoth? For the director of music we read in the preface of the sons of Korah, according to Alamoth, a song. The term Alamoth occurs only twice in the Bible. It's a musical term that alternates with Sheminith, making it clear that both have to do with the way harps and lyres, lyres are little harps, were tuned or played. A harp and a lyre is like a guitar and a ukulele. They're very close, but one's kind of tinny and small, a deeper and resonant sound. What is the meaning of Alamoth? Well, actually, the meaning of Alamoth is a bunch of giggling girls. Really, giggling girls. That's the meaning of Alamoth. From the Hebrew word alam, to be joyful, hidden, and poised to burst forth, with an emphasis coming out, a hiding for, say, safety or mysterious, like an unpredictable or hidden potential of a youth, or to the potential of any present situation which may be realized when the time is right. So Alamoth describes a squeaky sound coming from a bunch of little harps still being tuned up. That sound like a bunch of, maybe like an orchestra in an elementary school. Squeak, squeak. Or like a bunch of little girls giggling, very happy, full of life, and governed merely by the mesmerizing chaos of unrestricted harmony. The word Alamoth sounds a lot like almond. So to remind you of the purposeful background of the nervousness among confident trust will parallel this fortress-like nature of God with the positive traits of almonds. A little nutty there, but here goes. God is our fortress. We're studying this passage, Psalm chapter 46, in nature, in war, and in difficult people, or against nature, war, and difficult people. First of all, God is our fortress against nature. We can see in these passages that God is our strong fortress against nature, and he's also our safe fortress against nature. God is our strong fortress. We see in verse 1 or verse 2 in the Hebrew, God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Three key words here, although all the words are important: refuge, strength, ever-present help. First of all, God is our fortress-like refuge. He's our fortress-like strength. He's fortress-like and ever-present, and he's our fortress-like help. Sometimes we might just feel insignificant, like that squeaky liar, or like a giggling, gaggle of goofy girls. Say that 3 times fast. But God works through our insecurities to accomplish great things. Think about Korah. He and his family died due to a rebellion. But God rescued a few kids of his, and one of his descendants became the prophet Samuel, who has 2 books of the Bible written by him, and he anointed 2 successive kings of Israel, King Saul and King David. In 2 Kings, also, Elisha was on a fortress, on the wall of a fortress, on the edge, looking at the enemy Arameans coming as numerous as the sand on the seashore. It looked like the hills were alive, and yet it was all soldiers coming to destroy them. Elisha's servant cries out, "Oh no, we're going to die." Elisha prays, "Lord, open his eyes." Just calm, cool, and collected. Elisha's so much different in a contrast from his servant. The servant sees the gazillions of God's warrior angels with horses and chariots of fire coming down from the sky. And the enemy is blinded by God. Elisha leads the bajillions of enemy soldiers into the city and heals their blindness, and then feeds them. And the 2 nations become buddies. So you see, first there was a dangerous threat, and then they trusted in God, and then the enemies became their friends. This is a sequence that we can follow today. We have a dangerous threat. COVID is a dangerous threat. Difficult people are dangerous threats. Wars are dangerous threats. Nature sometimes is a dangerous threat with volcanoes and earthquakes and typhoons. And there's even a tornado that was seen in New York this week. In our preface, we saw that the word alamoth. But now, take a nutty look at this concept, the almond. Look at the almond. But first, look at the almond family. Now, there was an almond family band. But the family named Almond, they were from England in the 1600s, and they were successful, but they were persecuted, so they escaped to Ireland. And they saw opportunities in the American colonies, and so they moved across the Atlantic Ocean in search of land and freedom from religious and political persecution. Although the passage was expensive, and the ships were dark, crowded, and unsafe, many died, but those who made the voyage safely were rewarded with opportunities available to them in their homeland. You can't find many cities in the United States without at least one almond family. In short, they saw the dangers and balanced them against the benefits, and they succeeded. We can see that the almond family represents the first truth of Psalm chapter 46. In the 46th Psalm, God is our fortress-like help. God helped Elisha. He was a fortress of help for Elisha. Ireland was a fortress of help for Mr. and Mrs. Almond and their kids. They knew that they could get jobs and find opportunities in Ireland. When we need help, we can see God's flaming chariots waiting at our beck and call. We need not fear. In the 46th Psalm as well, God is our fortress-like refuge. God is a refuge or a safe place for us. Mr. Almond found a place of safety in Ireland. For us, though fears of drought, sickness, COVID-19, and poverty loom before us, our fortress is found in none of these things. Instead, found in God. We find refuge in him emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Their ever mindful or omniscient God still knew their every need. In the 46th Psalm, God is also our fortress like strength. God is our strength. When the almonds were weakened on the 3-month-long journey on the crashing waves of the oceans, they could find their strength in God. Though they had said goodbye to their familiar background, they still had their ever-present, ever-powerful or omnipotent God to empower them. In the 46th Psalm, God is fortress-like and ever-present. God is omnipresent. The almonds knew that wherever they went, be it to a nearby country or to the other side of the ocean, God would be there for them. God is not only our strong fortress, but also our safe fortress. I read on the internet, it said, "Congratulations, you survived April. Welcome to the 5th level of Jumanji." It seems surreal to see everybody in face masks and to watch online pastors preaching to empty churches, yet to hundreds and even thousands of people online, like a science fiction movie or like The Twilight Zone. Yet we are almost done with this chapter. We learned much about COVID, about ourselves, about society, and hopefully about our relationship with God. God is our fortress against nature, our fortress against war, and our fortress against difficult people. God is our fortress against nature. We saw that God is our strong fortress against nature, but he is also our safe fortress against nature. God is our safe fortress. We read in verses 2 and 3, "Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging." Now, notice a few key words here. Not fear, mountains fall, waters roar, and mountains quake. For a nutty analogy, let us look at some of the positive benefits of the almond.